your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Thanks for joining us for our Week in Review. I'm Naveen Day. An Alberta Health Services report shows a big spike in the number of times ambulances have not been able to respond to emergency calls in Calgary. The report shows a number of red alerts in the city for the month of April was 10 times higher than 3 years before. The province says it's been dealing with an increase in emergency calls due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, opioids, and other concerns, and notes that 4 new ambulances are serving Calgary, including new staff. Opposition NDP leader Rachel Notley says the United Conservative government needs to hire more full-time paramedics. And if you're a patient in an Edmonton hospital, you're likely to be forced into the hallway instead of a room. This, according to a startling report by Alberta Health Services. NDP Deputy Leader Sarah Hoffman responded on Thursday to the growing concern about the state of healthcare in Alberta and called on the UCP to immediately address the crisis she says they've created.
The AMA's head of emergency medicine, Dr. Paul Parks, described today's situation as, quote, disaster mode. I'm deeply concerned about where we will be in the early fall when respiratory illnesses and other demands on hospitals traditionally increase. We have seen the current disaster approaching for quite some time. Red alerts where no ambulances are available have exploded in Edmonton and area. We used to have a handful every month in 2019, adding up to a few minutes per month. But this year, there are hundreds every month, adding up to dozens of hours. One of the main causes of this is ambulances getting stuck at overwhelmed hospitals, unable to hand off their patients. Last year, for the first time, ambulances in St. Albert, Spruce Grove, Fort Saskatchewan, and Strathcona County spent more time responding to calls in Edmonton than in their own communities.
Children and babies in Alberta are now eligible to receive a dose of the Moderna Spikevax vaccine. The vaccine was rolled out in Alberta on August 2nd after being approved by Health Canada on July 14th. Kids from the age of 6 months to 5 years old are now eligible to receive the shot. The reaction has been mixed here in southern Alberta. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details from parents and health professionals on this contentious issue.
It's just another beautiful day in Lethbridge for Matea Kovacs and her son Liam to get outside and play. When it comes to the topic of COVID-19 vaccinations for kids, Kovacs says she won't be vaccinating her 9-month-old son.
We just don't feel there's enough long-term studies for the vaccine yet. We have been vaccinated for every other scheduled vaccine. We just don't feel ready to get this for him yet.
Randall Robbins made the decision to vaccinate her daughter Chloe. Robbins explained that the family didn't go out much until Chloe was able to receive the jab.
We'll just feel more comfortable trying to live a more normal life again now that she's going to be vaccinated. We can just relax a little bit. We've been waiting for it for a long time, so it's nice to give her some protection finally.
According to Dr. Supriya Sharma, the Chief Medical Advisor for Health Canada, the COVID-19 vaccine for kids is a 2-dose primary series administered 4 weeks apart.
It's a smaller dose of 25 micrograms, which is half the dose authorized for children 6 to 11 years of age, and 1/4 of the dose authorized for people over the age of 12. Clinical trials showed that the immune response to Spikevax in children 6 months to 5 years of age was similar to that seen in people 18 to 25. As with all clinical trials, the children in the study were followed closely for any reports of side effects, and the vaccine was well tolerated, with no unexpected safety issues identified.
Thankfully, he's been healthy and we haven't had to worry about any underlying issues.
Alberta Health says that more than 234,000 Albertans between the age of 6 months to 5 years old are now eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Now, check out this terrifying video from Monday. Some hail, even the size of softballs, wreaked havoc on vehicles and property off the QE2 near Markerville and Innisfail, Alberta. And 2 hours away in Nordegg, smaller-sized hail caught some hikers off guard who literally had to make a run for it. According to Jesse Wagger of Environment and Climate Change Canada, it was a series of supercell storms that moved through the area from the west, beginning in the foothills, that travel east and southeast. A massive hailstone was recovered from the storm system that broke Canadian records, weighing at a whopping 292.71 grams and measuring 123 millimeters in diameter. It's been a busy summer in our newsroom as we are attempting to bring you full interviews of the candidates vying for the top job in the United Conservative Party. And we have two of them for you in this episode. Up next, Todd Loewen shares his plan to unite the UCP.
I believe that as we travel Alberta and engage Albertans, that will give us a chance for Albertans to feel like they've been listened to and had a voice.
Alberta's United Conservative Party leadership race has 7 confirmed candidates running and will be choosing its new leader to replace Premier Jason Kenney on October the 6th. Jeanette Roche spoke with one of those candidates vying for the Premier seat. He is Todd Loewen, an MLA from Northern Alberta.
What fired you up to join this race to become the new leader of the UCP and the Premier of Alberta? It's a big job.
Yes, it is a big job, but I've been looking forward to this opportunity to get into this leadership race. I'd never envisioned myself as running for Premier in the past. But what we've seen in the last few years, I think, has left Albertans wanting a new direction. And I feel that there's a lot of Albertans that haven't been heard. And I feel that I can represent a lot of Albertans that have had those feelings. And it's an opportunity to get things back on track in Alberta. And I think Albertans are looking for something. And we have a good group of candidates that are running for leadership right now. And I believe that we'll be able to give those options to people to choose from. And again, looking forward to this leadership race, looking forward to being selected as the Premier of Alberta at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the UCP seems to be a very divided party. So what will it take to make the Conservatives united once again?
Well, I think we're already on track for that right now. We've had a divisive leader in the past, and he's leaving his post, and that's why we have the leadership race going on right now. So I think a lot of that has already started to come together. I believe that as we travel Alberta and engage Albertans, that will give us a chance for Albertans to feel like they've been listened to and had a voice. When we look forward to the leadership race here, and I think there's an opportunity to bring Albertans together, and I think that we can bring this party back together and be able to represent Alberta going forward and into the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Todd, a big part of your campaign is obviously to put Alberta first, right? So, and I believe that certainly resonates with rural Albertans, especially now that the federal government says it wants to basically force farmers to reduce fertilizer use in order to meet its climate targets. So what's wrong with that approach? Would you approach that differently, and how would you respond to the Prime Minister about this as Premier?
Well, we have a real problem here in Canada. I think when we look at our dealings with Ottawa and Confederation, it's a broken system. We see Ottawa trying to interfere in the jurisdiction of Alberta and trying to push things on Albertans that Albertans just are not interested. And that's across the province. The latest, of course, is the fertilizer issue with the 30% reduction. We see the carbon tax. We see things where they've interfered with the tech mines and with property rights too. There's a lot of issues with our deal with Ottawa, and we've been really good at writing strongly worded letters that the Prime Minister has been able to crumple up and throw in the garbage, but we need to actually do something now. I think we need to start taking action immediately, and we've been kicking the can down the road. We've been having panels travel Alberta. We've been having reports drawn up, but we haven't been doing anything. And I think we need to start, and I will, as Premier, start immediately working towards some of the things that Albertans would like to see, which one of them would be our own pension plan that would save Albertans $3 to $4 billion a year, and our own Alberta Constitution.
Wow. Okay. So with that said, do you agree with the proposed Alberta Sovereignty Act?
The Sovereignty Act is basically saying no when Ottawa is infringing on our rights as Albertans. And so I agree that we need to be able to say no, but I would rather focus on working towards the things that we know we can do. We can look towards Quebec and see the things that they have already done, and we can work towards those things ourselves. Again, pension plan, employment insurance, collecting our own provincial taxes, provincial police force, all those things that we can do without having a constitutional crisis, without having a fight with Ottawa.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about healthcare for a moment. Lots to talk about here. So we all know about the doctor shortage in Alberta. My own doctor is leaving the province. So what needs to change to increase physician availability?
Well, we see that especially in rural Alberta, but I'm sure it's a concern sometimes in the cities too, as far as the shortage of doctors. Rural Alberta, we see emergency rooms closing down all the time, and this has been an ongoing problem, but I think it's actually gotten worse. And what I would like to see is we have a post-secondary education system here in Alberta that I don't believe is graduating as many people as we need to serve our needs as a society, because we end up actually importing doctors from all over the world. And don't get me wrong, myself, I don't know if I've ever had an Alberta educated doctor as a family doctor. So we love our doctors that have come out from outside the country. They're doing a great job for us. But again, we have a post-secondary education system that's subsidized heavily by the Alberta taxpayer, and it's not providing the educated people that we need. And I think that's a serious problem.
After the break, UCP leadership hopeful Travis Taves shares with Hal Roberts his plan to help small business owners get back on their feet. The race to succeed Jason Kenney as Alberta Premier is heating up. We just heard from candidate Todd Loewen before the break, but another name vying for the top job is Travis Taves. The former finance minister took some time to speak with Jeanette Rocher. Take a look.
Now, we talk about a big tent, obviously, but what about social conservatives within the party? How can you ensure as leader that they won't be shut out?
Well, look, many of my personal views would align with the views of social conservatives. That's where I am personally. And yet I deeply respect the views of others right across the spectrum of our conservative movement. There are many positions held on social issues, held passionately by really good people right across the spectrum. And we have to recognize that and respect that. Again, I will ensure that every MLA has a voice in this caucus, that every MLA has the ability to bring their views and the views of their constituents passionately to the caucus table. I've got a plan to manage caucus so that all MLAs can firstly represent their constituents fairly and accurately, and secondly, bring their own personal views to the table and advocate for those.
Rachel Notley and the NDP have been acting like a government in waiting, coming up with plans to help our economy get back on track. What do you think it'll take to help many of our small to medium business owners get back to black like the province is trying to get right now as we make our way out of the pandemic? I know we no longer have the deficit, but we still have a debt that we're tackling.
Sure. Well, one thing we won't do is what the NDP did in 2015. And that's raise taxes, create extra regulatory burden and hurdles that sent tens of billions of dollars of capital out of the province and ultimately undermined our economic growth in this province, put us really into recession and left far less opportunity for our small businesses and entrepreneurs. The last 2 years have been very tough for many of our small businesses, especially those in hospitality, those in accommodation, tourism, for instance. Now, Alberta provided more support than any other province to our small businesses, but I don't want to pretend that support covered all the losses. It didn't. I know it's been tough. Look, I'm a small business owner as well. The way we've benefited and the way we've seen others benefit is when we see general strength in the economy, when there's investment returning back to the province, when folks are moving back into Alberta like they are again today. That creates increasing opportunity for entrepreneurs and small businesses to benefit in their business enterprises.
So Travis, you talked about, how Alberta's trying to diversify its economy, not just the energy sector, but the IT sector with technology, film and television. What about our farmers? What can you really do to help our producers if you become leader?
I came from New York a few months ago as the Minister of Finance, meeting with the investment community, as you would expect. Virtually every conversation morphed to North American energy and food security. Alberta has not only a great opportunity, I suggest a deep responsibility to get on with the responsible production of both energy and agriculture. I'll be rolling out an agriculture platform here in the upcoming days that will make additional moves on improving the competitiveness of Alberta's agriculture industry and agriculture manufacturing and processing sector.
Now, you talk about a lot of your previous successes and accomplishments as finance minister here in Alberta, but a number of Albertans were quite upset during the province's negotiations with our nurses and what appeared to be a pay cut for our healthcare professionals right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. We weren't out of the woods yet. So how do you respond to that as our province's former finance minister?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's just simply misinformation. There was no pay cut. In fact, I look at the negotiations with the public sector broadly, which fell under my leadership. Now, that didn't include physicians, but I was responsible for all of our collective bargaining agreements. And I adjusted our labor mandate twice in the last 18 months because I had two principles that governed our approach. Number one, we had fiscal objectives, as you would expect, as we should have. But secondly, I had a second principle, and that was the principle of fairness to both our public sector workers and to ensure that we had a settlement that was fair in the eyes of Albertans. That's important. And so that required an adjustment in the summer of 2021 to the labor mandate, which include increases. I would suggest material increases for our public sector workers, and that included our nurses. So I was so pleased when we ultimately completed the negotiations with the nurses, and nurses ratified the agreement by a rate of over 90% in January. In fact, I quoted Heather Smith in my budget speech because her words were so conciliatory to how well the process went.
Summer is in full swing, but what can be said about your golf swing? Up next, we chat with a PGA of Canada head professional to get some tips. Golf is either one of the most relaxing, enjoyable games on the planet or one of the most frustrating, depending on your mindset. We want to learn a bit more about how to enjoy and improve our golf game today. So, Jeanette Roche met with Eric Porter. He is the PGA of Canada head professional at the Lethbridge Country Club.
So let's get right into that. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see golfers make?
So one of the most common mistakes that we see golfers make is definitely overswinging. So everyone wants to hit the ball long and far, but when we swing too hard, that's when things go out of whack. So just, something like just slowing down your tempo. Instead of trying to hit it 400 yards, let's just try to hit it down the fairway so we have a clear next shot to the green instead of being in the trees. Some other mistakes that we do see is, players are using wrong equipment. This game is hard enough already. Now with custom fitting, being able to fit players to exactly to their spec makes the game much more enjoyable and makes it much more easy for sure.
So Eric, speaking about equipment, how important is it to get the right equipment for yourself? And what about club lengths? Do these lengths have to be a certain?
Yeah,
clubs have to be a
definitely.
certain length?
Once again, every golfer is unique based on height, length of arms, hand size. So definitely, if you're going to be investing in golf clubs, I definitely recommend coming and seeing a PGA of Canada professional. You'll get properly fit. So once again, we have the proper shaft length, the proper shaft flex, the proper characteristics of, do we need to hit it higher, do we need to hit it lower? And grip, same thing. Depending on your hand size, that's going to dictate the size of your grip. And there's also other factors that may change your grip size as well. For example, seniors with arthritis, we want to get them in a great big grip so they're not squeezing so hard. So just little things like that. Once again, all equipment is fit directly to each individual, and I 100% recommend seeing a PGA of Canada professional to get properly fit. It will make the game much more enjoyable.
Any tips on how to deal with those windy days, especially here in Lethbridge?
There are definitely some tips that we could utilize and put in our bag to make the wind a little bit more friendly when we are playing. And when it comes to basically hitting a ball lower, if I was hitting a stock golf shot here with this 7-iron, my ball position would be basically in the middle of my stance. I'd make a full swing, my hands would finish up high like this. if we were trying to hit a low golf shot or in the wind, one thing we definitely recommend is club one to two clubs up. And then simply just by placing the ball position back in the stance, what's going to happen is the club's going to hit the ground. We're going to make a shorter follow through, and we're going to be able to hit the ball on a lower trajectory so the wind won't have as much factor. And like I said, definitely club up. A lot of golfers, when it is windy, the biggest mistake that most amateur golfers make is they get up there and, well, the wind's blowing in my face, I'm just going to swing harder. That's the worst thing you could do. You create more spin on the ball, and the wind is going to prevent more curvature.
Most of us don't have the greatest swing in the world, Eric. So what's your advice on picking up your swing, getting a better swing?
So to get a better swing, the first thing I'd focus on is finishing balanced. If we're able to finish a swing balanced, we're not over swinging. But most golfers, like I said, we're trying to hit the ball so far. If you're trying to hit the ball that far, take an extra club, swing less, so you'll be able to finish nice and balanced. So many golfers that we see on the golf course, you know, they swing and they're falling all over the place. So when we hit a golf shot, we want to make sure that it's just back and we're able to hold that finish, that we're nice and balanced. If we're moving all over the place, we're just over swinging, and that's going to cause a lot of misstruck shots.
And then, of course, Eric, as we mentioned many times, it's a very frustrating game. So how do we not give in to frustration and keep our mind set calm? Any tips on that?
So first off, most golfers need to realize we're going out there for fun with our friends or family or, you know, working crew. We're not going out there playing for millions of dollars like the PGA and LPGA professionals. So the biggest thing is it is a game. Go in there with an open mindset of go out there, try to have fun. Don't worry about your score. And one piece of advice my dad always gave me is don't worry about your last shot, worry about your next shot. You can't change anything about your last shot. So if you hit a bad one, don't be down on yourself and, you know, letting it dictate the rest of your day. Just worry about hitting a good next shot and, you know, forget about that bad shot. There's nothing you can do about it. So just move on.
When we return, residents at a Lethbridge tent encampment site began removing their tents earlier this week. We will explain why. That and other local stories are up next. Is the city of Lethbridge doubling down on its handling of its tent encampment situation? Residents of the site were issued some unsettling notices on Wednesday morning. The city of Lethbridge is continuing its efforts to handle the tent encampment situation. Wednesday morning, residents of the site were handed notices to vacate the area under the Petty Trespass Act. Both residents in and out of the site are not happy with the action being taken against tent encampment residents.
Honestly, I'm angry. You know, if we had a magic wand, as I was just telling the other news, and we had a solution that, you know, we knew where everybody was going, I would volunteer my time and help locate the camp and remove it.
Police and bylaw officers can enforce the act with fines. They say, however, the majority of residents are complying with the order. Many of them are relocating their tents behind the shelter that is operated by Alpha House.
I'm encouraging people to set up there because what we've heard over the last few weeks is, you know, that could be a potential spot for the sanctioned campground that's being proposed, right? You know, there's a lot of coulds.
However, Director of Community Services Mike Fox says sanctioned encampment sites have been problematic for other cities that have them.
Even if we did that, we would have to have people pack up every once in a while, every 3 days, 4 days, to make sure that we could give the site a thorough clean.
Fox adds that there is currently room in the shelter which would provide the best services. However, many of our homeless population say it is not as safe in the shelter as it is outside.
My personal thing, I felt violated. Girls supposed to check girls. Guys supposed to check guys. But it's not like that there. Not ever since these new young ones came down from Calgary.
That's the
they,
shelter?
Young and snobby, look at us like we're animals.
As you can see behind me, the number of tents at this encampment site has thinned out significantly. The cleanup operation is part of a $230,000 allocation City Council recently approved for encampment cleanup. Bill Ginther with the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen says the money is not being put to good use.
I heard one of the city staff say that probably 95% of that will be utilized in wages. My question is, where were those wages before? These are the same people. They're not hiring people to do this. And you know, if they really wanted to do it in a reasonable way, you could hire somebody to come and clean up. That wouldn't take a whole lot. Once you've sent people away, just clean up. So I think it's a waste of money. I think it's trying to show people we're doing something. Look, the money we're spending. And of course, as people say, you throw money at a problem doesn't mean the problem's solved.
As of Wednesday afternoon, only 17 tents remained at the site. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day. Once again, Lethbridge is number 1, but it's not for a good reason. The 2021 Crime Severity Index report is in, and Lethbridge again scored the highest. Lethbridge's score in 2021 was 128.65, with a 7% decrease from the previous year. The CSI score monitors the severity level of police-reported crimes. Chief of Police Shaheen Medizadeh says the type of crime that is bringing the overall number up is not from violent crimes.
A lot of them are property-related crime, break-in enters, etc., and opportunity crimes, lack of better words. So in that sense, the crime, obviously we're number 1, but we also have to realize when you look at the geographic area, it's not just city of Lethbridge. They're combining rural areas around Lethbridge, Coaldale, and other communities that we have no control over how they are policed. So, but when you look at the city of Lethbridge, it's on a major downward trend, which we have to celebrate. The bad news is we're still number 1.
It's really came on strong, especially with the opioid pandemic. And you know what? I feel safe here, and I would recommend anyone to you know, have a look at other communities and see how we fare, because we actually do quite well.
Higgins says a resolution will be brought forward in the fall with the hopes of increasing the police budget so officers will have the adequate resources to help crime in the city. The case of Courtney Shaw, a Lethbridge woman charged with attempted murder following a hostage situation last month in the downtown, was back in Lethbridge Provincial Court on Wednesday. BCN's Angela Stewart was in attendance with an update.
Shaw's case has been adjourned until next month for a bail hearing. She was not present in court today as she still remains in custody. 40-year-old Courtney Louise Shaw of Lethbridge is charged with 1 count of attempted murder, among other charges including aggravated assault, taking a hostage, and use of an imitation firearm while committing an offense. On July 14th, a 54-year-old woman was taken hostage inside the Lethbridge Legal Guidance Office. The victim sustained injuries to her neck, and Shaw was taken into custody and was charged a day later. Now this case will be back in court on September 1st.
Thank you, Angela. Coming up after the break, BCN catches up with Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas.